This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Welcome to the Fee for Service Dentist Podcast, Dr. Sonny Spira. Today, my guest, Dr. Bridgett Jorgensen, and her husband, Alan Jorgensen, who was the inventor of Lighthouse 360. And he'll talk about where that came from. And we'll talk to Bridgett from their marriage when they were 17 and 18 to their honeymoon that was one night camping. We'll leave that alone. And how she went to hygiene school on the recommendation from an orthodontist, and then she went to dental school. And she worked a whole bunch of jobs, and then she did a startup, her and her best friend. And that startup grew and grew and grew, and it was out of network from day one. Firm believer in the doctor-patient relationship connection. Then, and up to today, dental practice matchmaker is a wonderful product and service that a lot of dentists are getting used to and using to put dentists in contact with dentists and removing a lot of the middlemen. Okay. So check it out if you don't know about it. I know it's on Facebook and I know it's around. They have, I think, over 11,000 people that are involved. And hope you enjoy the show. There's plenty of tidbits and things that come up that they're very interesting, in my opinion. As always, Fee for Service podcast brought to you by Proficil and Kettenbach Dental. They're very excited to announce this new fluoride varnish that no longer uses alcohol or resin. It uses a dimethicone gel, which leaves the teeth with a smooth, silky, lubricious feel. No more grit. Contact Kettenbach today for more details and do more varnishes that patients will appreciate. Call 877-532-2123 or visit KettenbachUSA.com. Enjoy the show, folks. If you like it, please click like, share it with your friends, subscribe. The video's on YouTube and on Spotify. It has both of them running, and on iTunes and pretty much anywhere you find your podcast. If you don't like it, please reach out to me, sonnyspira@gmail.com. As always, appreciate you all. Hopefully you're enjoying it and have a great day.
My name is Drew Burns, and I'm a part of a small group of dentists who believe something crazy. We believe that the standard of care is just not good enough. We demand the best of ourselves and the best for our patients. We believe that the best way? No, the only way to practice dentistry is on our own terms. If you ask the dental consultants or the corporate CEOs, they tell you that what we're doing isn't smart, that fee-for-service dentistry is dead, and that the golden age of dentistry is over. Yet, while others focus on profits first, we focus on the patient first. And yet our offices are some of the most profitable in the entire country because we invest in ourselves and we are doing things right. It's our name on the door and it's our reputation on the line. My name is Drew Burns and I am a fee-for-service dentist. This is the Fee-for-Service Dentist Podcast and these are our stories.
Welcome to the Fee for Service Dentist Podcast. Tonight, extra special episode. We have a legacy generation. If you all remember Dr. Delaney Spalding, one of my absolute favorite peach of a doctor person, just unapologetically her. I love her. Well, this is mom and dad. So this is going to be fun. So I can't wait. So we have Dr. Bridgett Jorgensen and her husband, Alan Jorgensen. Let me give you some of their background. You may have seen their Celebrity Family Feud. How about that? Celebrity Family Feud episode, which was all-time classic. It went viral, the whole thing. So Dr. Bridgett Jorgensen, RDH DMD, okay? He worked as a dental receptionist, insurance coordinator while in hygiene school, where Alan did the billing for the office I worked at, so entered the dental industry tiptoeing in. Finished hygiene school, worked 2 years as a hygienist till she realized that I have a bit more variety in my day if I went to dental school. After graduating from dental school, worked for DSO, a public health clinic, taught at a dental assisting school, and temped in a lot of practices. Started a practice in 1994. This year is our 30th anniversary. How cool is that? From scratch with my best friend, another dentist, and my husband with a business degree. Ran it as an out-of-network practice, not fee-for-service. I know people make that distinction. I'm sorry, I don't. I think if you have a fee and you get paid that, whether it comes from here or there, it's to me. But people want to, they wanted to separate. That's fine. As in, we estimated what patients would need to pay, collected that, and also received payment from insurance companies. We kept credit cards on file and will bill if necessary after insurance paid. That's before COVID. That was good. Sold my practice in 2018 to a great person, and I now work for her a few days a month. Also started dental practice matchmaker, which some of you may know, out of boredom, and need to make sure private practice was an option for young dentists. And I swear to God, that's one of the things that, and the reasons I stay connected to the dental school and continue to talk. These young graduating people are just brainwashed that there's no options. They have to go work corporate, and it's just so wrong. But anyway, we'll get into that because we're going to really agree on that. Now, let's talk Alan Jorgensen for a second. Alan obtained a BS degree in business administration at night while working full-time as a computer programmer. Worked in corporate America for telecommunication companies for 15 years before becoming involved in dentistry. Co-owner and practice manager for our chartless dental practice in 1994. Unheard of at the time. I can tell you. That's about when we were starting to do things like that too. So started Lighthouse 360 with two friends to help improve the dental office workflow, and sold Lighthouse 360 in 2013. So some of you know Lighthouse product. It was a very nice add-on software solution. Recently co-founded Inside Desk, which is a revenue cycle management for large group practices. Along the way, they had 4 children. The first just before our 10th anniversary in the middle of my 3rd year of dental school. Well, that's kind of cool. We have a forensic psychiatrist, a dentist, a lawyer, and a marketing genius that is now running Dental Practice Matchmaker. We also have 2 granddaughters and 2 grandsons. They by far are our greatest accomplishment. Well, I can't disagree with that in any way, shape, or form. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome to the podcast. How you guys doing?
Good.
So you guys were down in Atlanta, right? If I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Now,
Just
I remember when Delaney said that she decided she was going to go to up north to Boston area for dental school, and she was kind of that little rebel, right? I couldn't hear you. What you say?
Yeah, she picked anywhere but Georgia. So, Georgia would have been the best place for her to go to school, and she was bound and determined to go where she wanted to go to school. But we got a great son-in-law out of it, so it all worked out.
There you go. I like that. So talk about, let's start at the beginning for yourself. Bridgette, let's start with you. When you, and it said, we didn't talk about this in the intro, but you were at an orthodontist appointment, and the orthodontist suggested you go to hygiene school. Talk about that interaction.
I got braces kind of late in high school, and told him I liked teeth, and what kind of career could I do in teeth. Never remotely occurred to me to be a dentist or an orthodontist or anything. And he's like, well, you should be a hygienist. And I had never even heard of that. And I was like, that sounds like a great idea. So we got married 5 months after we graduated from high school. So I was 17 and Alan was 18. And I started school about a year after we graduated. And I went to school for about a year up in St. Louis where we lived. And then we moved down, and I ended up doing hygiene school down in Atlanta.
Okay,
But
so
our dental journey started right after we got married, because I got her without her wisdom teeth out, and I had to take her to the oral surgeon to get the wisdom teeth out, and they refused to believe we were married.
So yeah.
that was in St. Louis, you said?
Yeah, we're from Granite City, Illinois, which is a little suburb out of St. Louis,
Okay.
Missouri.
Okay, so you were living in St. Louis, and then you moved to Atlanta to attend hygiene, or when you finished hygiene?
No, Alan got transferred down here. So I was on a waiting list for a year up in St. Louis, and then came down here, and I was on another waiting list for another year down in Georgia to get into hygiene school.
So she was taking classes the whole time she was on the waiting list, building up things and just trying to get into the program.
Sure.
Yeah. So I got in down here and went for 2 years and got out. I was a receptionist and an orthodontic assistant while I was in hygiene school down here. So I got out and had had kind of more real world experience when I got out of hygiene school, and then did hygiene for 2 years and liked it. But Alan, I would come home and grumble at Alan that I didn't like it. And he's like, well, you're never going to get promoted to dentist. So if you want to do something else, you need to do something about it.
And
So
fortunately, because of those 1-year waits up in St. Louis and 1-year wait down here, when she looked into attending dental school, she found out that a bachelor's was not a requirement, just a certain number of credit hours. So she was shy a hard science course that she took, and she got into dental school without having a bachelor's.
which is different than now.
Don't do that nowadays.
Yeah, I
Back
think
then,
it's a lot more studious. You have to do a little bit more now, but
Now,
yeah,
what
I
school
got
did
it.
you go to, Al?
oh, me? So
Don't just don't.
I was pursuing a degree at night up in St. Louis for mathematics. When we got transferred down here, I was hoping to go to Georgia Tech, and I found out that they do not offer degrees at night. They offer classes at night, but you cannot complete a degree. So I wound up switching from a high-level mathematics degree to a business degree, and finished out my 2 years in business administration. I never took an accounting course prior to becoming a business major.
All right. Okay. Well, interesting setup. So you're in Atlanta. You finished hygiene school. Now, were you able to accelerate the degree because you had all these background courses? Could you do it 1 year, or do you have to do 2?
Not at all. But I had a whole bunch of classes, but basically you have to have 2 years of clinical stuff in hygiene in order to get through. But the good news is I only had to do the clinical stuff, so that allowed me to do basically I worked half the day, and then I could do clinical stuff half the day. So that made me be able to work half the day and do school half the day.
So, Alan, you're going to night school at this time. Bridgette, you're in hygiene school. You graduate hygiene school. What's it look like for the next, you said 2 years you went into practice, right?
Yep. Worked down. And the cool part is I had 2 part-time jobs when I got out of school. One was, this is how old I am. I got out and I worked as a hygienist for $13 an hour.
Good old days.
At one job, and I worked I think Monday and Thursday at that job, and on Tuesdays and Wednesdays I worked at another job, and I made 50% commission, so 50% of anything that happened in my chair. But this was, I did dip tank x-rays, so
Sure.
I would take x-rays, go expose them.
What year
I
was this?
saw this was 84 to 86.
Okay, all right.
No, 86 to 88. But I saw patients every 30 minutes. I had one chair. So, if patients canceled, I was absolutely thrilled, but I made a lot of money on commission, and that was great. But then years later, when I was hiring a hygienist, we ended up doing a blended, we offered hygiene where we would do hourly plus commission, and that was phenomenal for our hygienists and for us. We never had trouble, and we still don't, getting hygienists to work for us because we offered that blended thing that they loved.
Kept the hygienists around until I poached them over to Lighthouse because they were just great people. And from the business side, make me write big checks. I love it. The bigger the check I write to you, the better it is for everybody. And so it was just a fantastic account structure.
Gotcha. Okay. So
Right.
2 years out of hygiene in practice.
Mhm.
What dental school did you end up going to?
Southern Illinois. So we moved back up to the St. Louis area.
Okay.
Our
That's
parent,
interesting.
it was so crazy because Southern Illinois still offered in-state tuition if your parents lived there. And my parents still lived in Illinois. So, and at the time, Medical College of Georgia offered the lowest tuition in the country, and Southern Illinois offered the second lowest. So I went to the cheapest dental school in the country, or second lowest, which was phenomenal. I mean, I think my tuition was $3,000 a year. So not bad. Our instruments were more than that every year, so we still had to pay more, but pretty phenomenal.
I was working for a German company by that time, so if we would have went to Augusta, I would have spent my entire life transferring up to Atlanta to then catch flights. By moving up to St. Louis so that she could go to school, I was 10 minutes from the St. Louis International Airport to go wherever I need to go. So it just worked out perfect for both our careers.
Nice.
Great.
Nice. So what year did you end up graduating dental school, Bridget?
92.
Huh?
1992.
All right, I was 89, so just a little bit ahead of you. So we're in the same generation dentally anyway. They start talking about third generation bonding agents and those kind of things. I remember all that. Okay, so you have listed a number of job options and stuff like that. So when you graduate dental school, well, first of all, did it meet what your expectations from hygiene to dentistry to now being more challenge, et cetera?
I mean, I didn't go into it blindly though. Obviously, I had worked in a lot of dental offices. I temped
Right.
for a lot of time when I was trying to get these prerequisites to get into dental school. So I temped in a lot of offices. So I knew what I wanted. I knew, what I didn't want. So it really narrowed things down for me. And I felt very fortunate to be able to get out and kind of hit the ground running. I knew what I wanted.
But this is where we also tie it back to Delaney that you referenced earlier. Because she got her hygiene license down here in Georgia, she maintained it the whole time she was up in Illinois. When she came back, she hadn't.
I didn't have my dental license.
Yeah, we were supposed to go to Hawaii, and that all fell through. So she returned to Georgia as a licensed hygienist, and so she was temping as a hygienist, waiting to do the boards. So she's going into these offices as Dr. Bridgette, but doing hygiene and having all sorts of interesting experience with all that type stuff.
So what he's getting to is I was 9 months pregnant, temping as a hygienist. I ended up taking my dental boards, and giving birth to our daughter. Did not make it through boards. I did the first 2 days. She was due on January 27th. And our first child was born my third year of dental school, and he was 10 days late. So I'm like, oh, I'll be fine. Yeah. But she was not as cooperative. And I made it through the first 2 days of boards, and then I had to leave. And the bad part, it was Georgia boards the very first time I took them. It was Southern Regional 6 months later when I had kindergarten. Yeah. So, but goes on. It was a great story for her to get into dental school, because that was part of her essays. Like, hey, I was part of a Georgia board, a zillion years ago.
I was born to do this. That's right. Yes. Literally. All right. Okay. So you finish your boards by hook or by crook. You finish your boards.
Yes.
And now talk about the practices that you went into, because I'm going to make a guess that most of what you learned in there was how you did not want to practice. But
exactly.
Go ahead and share a little bit, because you said DSO and all these other practices.
I started at a DSO. One of them did not have a sink in the sterilization area. There was a big sign, you must leave, you must take lunch, you will not be paid for lunch, but I forget, you couldn't take time off, but it was ridiculous. I was just,
regardless of what you're working, we're taking lunch out because we have to show that you had lunch, whether you had lunch or not.
Yeah. And I mean, and it was a guy that the person that owned it had lost his license in Florida, so you find out all these things. It was just ridiculous. I opened an office for them in Alpharetta, which is a place over here. As soon as I got the whole office organized, and was so excited because it was going to be my office and it was closer to where I lived. I had been working for them in a different area. They fired me, and I was like, oh my God. So I mean, just horrible things, and you realize right away that you're a commodity to them. You are not valuable in any way. So, but the good thing is, and I got fired from a lot of other offices too, but it pushed me into starting my own office. And that was the very best thing that could have ever happened to me. So I started an office with, I actually met someone at Dental One, which is a DSO down here, and introduced her to my brother-in-law, and they got married. So before they were married, we started this practice together. and Alan did all the business stuff, and Chris and I worked together. We kind of assisted each other. She was an assistant
Sure.
before dental school. And so we started the practice together. We worked together for about 2 years, and then she had to leave to go back to kind of a more steady paycheck.
job.
Yeah, paycheck.
So the startup.
Yeah, and we were growing. So she left, and then we ended up buying another building and growing it. And then she ended up coming back about maybe 5 years later, something like that. So it, we built it. We went through maybe 8 or so associates over a period of time. I mean, it was great. It really was.
So the
Well,
two of
very,
you are
very
working
simple.
it, right? And you have an associate. I'm imagining the place is moving pretty good, especially.
It was. I mean, we did $1 million after about 4 years, and this was in the 90s. Yeah.
Well, that was, I remember that. I remember Dwayne Schmidt wrote the book, The $1 Million Practice, or 3
Mhm.
steps to the $1 Million
That's really
Practice. And
standard
that was,
now. That was not standard, in the 90s. So,
yeah, 100%. Yeah.
but we're getting almost 100 new patients a month for many, many, many years.
Without being a network, nobody was
Mhm.
picking us because we were on their list.
Mhm.
So
Right.
you have to do things differently if you want people to select you versus being assigned to you.
But I mean, at that point, we had 4 kids. We had childcare in our office. So, we were different. I mean, we had to offer different things. We had weekend hours, we had evening hours, we had childcare, we had later on we offered Botox and fillers, and just things that not every office offered. We had to be a little bit different, but I welcomed that. I wanted to do the different stuff just to
Kept it
be
fresh.
special. Yeah.
So looking back now, how much time did you spend picking the location that was going to work as a startup?
Well, we actually ended up we rented an orthodontist office that was only in that office like once a week. So
Okay.
we were there like 2 or 3 days a week, and we rented from him for $100 a day. The caveat was his office always looked the same. So we went in, we put up barriers in between.
Sure.
We put an autoclave and stuff in there. And then when we were done, we put everything in closets. It had to look no different for him. And that lasted almost 2 years. And then we bought our building and
A
we
year
moved
and a half.
yeah, and we moved into our own building. But it was a great startup way to do it.
So we started in November of 94, and by December of 95, the practice was already working out of the closet, was strong enough to purchase a building. And we found a good location, and it was a former
It was our
pediatric.
Yeah, our pediatrician's office. So they had a well waiting room and a sick waiting room. We took one of those waiting rooms and made it into a childcare office. And then we took the other waiting room and made it to the adult waiting room. And we put a mirror in between, a one-way mirror, so that patients could look in and see that their kids were being taken care of. So it was great for us.
The weirdest thing of people getting out with the dental appointment, doing the checkout, and then going back to the reception room, picking up a magazine, watching TV, and just chilling for an hour because their kids were having a blast and just enjoying the toys and stuff like that. So yeah, word got out.
All right, so clever, and the practice location wise had already been established as a medical provider, so it sounds like the location was pretty solid. All right, so what were some of the other things that were key to having a startup be that legitimate in 12 months in a pretty busy area, no, for dentists? A lot of dentists there, no?
It really was because we were female. We were in an area that was all male dentists. And again, this was early 90s, and about a third of my graduating class was female. But this is Georgia, and I don't think as many female dentists were down here. So Chris and I were the only female dentist in our immediate area. So all of the kids and we didn't have a pedodontist up here. So all of the kids ended up coming to us. So whether we wanted to be the pedodontist per se or not, we were. So we got really good at seeing kids. And that helped
offering
us.
family appointments so that we could schedule everybody all at once and have the facility.
So all the homeschooling families came to us because they could come in the middle of the day. and we were accommodating, and a lot of, I don't mean to be blunt, but a lot of the older male dentists did not want to see children at all. And we were open to that, so that helped it, and it got a reputation out that we were open to see children and all kinds of families. So it was good.
Howard Ferrand playbook. That's what he
Yeah,
talks about.
exactly.
Which another
Very
throw,
great stuff. Yeah.
another throwback
Bring
to
the children. Children come, parents follow. Right. The children.
Yes, exactly.
Well, you took care of little Johnny, and that little brat. If you could take care of him, you can take care of anybody. So yeah. That's, and I think we tried to do that a lot ourselves too, especially when I started, I remember. And then that's one of the things that my son has been doing and he has a kind of an affinity for kids and balloon animals and his whole thing, and it's working out really nicely. So, all right. So what does the practice look like out of network? You're in year 2. And at what point do you start the solution reach? Al?
Lighthouse. So
Lighthouse. I'm sorry. That's a flub because I had Solution Reach and Lighthouse was the competitor that we looked at. So please, we might have to edit that out, please.
We had lots of fun with all those guys.
So when did you start Lighthouse during this?
Well, it kind of basically once we bought the building and went full time and we were serious about it, then I needed to leave corporate America because I was still traveling while they were doing that. We were trying to juggle everything with the 4 kids. And it dawned on me that if I could affect their practice by $500 a day, which again, in the 90s, that was a pretty big lift, then I could afford to just walk away from a very nice job, nice benefits and everything else. And we became all in on the practice. So I sat down, and I never worked in a dental office before, been around it, but they walked up and they tried to show me a chart and how to build a chart. And I said, oh, hell no, we don't do charts here. And we immediately went chartless. And from that point forward, as I'm learning and I'm seeing what's going on, I've been attending the Hinman the whole time she was going through hygiene school, every ADA meeting since she became a dentist, and basically just saying, okay, there's a lot of good thoughts out there. There's a lot of best practices. Why don't anybody ever do them? Because they'll all go and listen, and they'll all take notes, and then they come back and they do it the old-fashioned way. And using her office as my laboratory, I came up with different practices, my best practices, and that was the formation of a Lighthouse in terms of a consulting, showing people that you could work smarter, you could let the technology do more for you. And we were doing that using the PracticeWorks practice management system because it was highly configurable. I could program it, and we just made it dance. After we did that for a while, we realized PracticeWorks was very small compared to all the other practice management systems out there. So we did a little tweak, and we figured out if we could reach in and if we could pull the data and still use our systems, learned at the front desk. I mean, in the throes of it, a lot of demand force and stuff like that, they came from oil change places. They had no dental DNA. All of our stuff was pure dental DNA of how a dental office should run. We made that pivot probably back in 2005, and then we rolled it out in 2007. So from 96 till 2005, I was the front desk, and I was helping hundreds, thousands of doctors run their offices better using PracticeWorks. We then switched over and helped all offices once we rolled out Lighthouse 360, Dentrix, SoftDent, EagleSoft, Open Dental. It worked with all of them. And we got our systems out there. And then that went on until, unfortunately, we sold, which I apologize for anybody watching, not my idea.
Going out of network can be really scary, but staying in network can be even scarier and riskier too, long term. Insurance reimbursements aren't even keeping pace with inflation, which can really affect the quality of your work, not to mention the quality of your life. I'm Allison Bernstein.
I'm Dr. Josh Bernstein. We went out of network over 20 years ago, and we can show you what worked, what didn't, and how you can do it with minimal risk.
ThriveOutOfNetwork.com teaches you everything you need to know, including the most important part, which is getting your team on board. It teaches them how to communicate with patients and getting them comfortable with the entire process.
Go to ThriveOutOfNetwork.com and check it out today. That's ThriveOutOfNetwork.com.
That was in 2013. But it was a, just picking up and saying, everybody would accuse, when I would try to explain to them how the systems would work, they said, well, it only works because you're there. And that would get me ticked off. It's kind of like, no, it works because it's a good system, and I had nothing to do with it. And the proof of concept was to make it where all the people could do what I just kind of took for granted because it was a good system. Whether it was our recall, reactivation, treatment planning, it's all systems. And to this day, when Delaney set up her office, the first thing we didn't put Lighthouse in there, it was already gone by then. We taught her the value of the systems, of understanding how things flow and monitoring it. And she's done phenomenal for us by just basically re-implementing those systems.
And she has Open Dental and Flex, and it has the same systems, but with different software.
Yeah, because she bought and paid a fortune for a practice, like like way overpaid for it, but she saw, exactly, like her vision was so strong, right? That she knew that she could make this work. And so she was buying a lot of potential, which usually you don't pay for potential, you pay for performance,
You don't, but if you
boy,
saw the neighborhood that she's in, you'd understand.
And it's the emotions and the urgency. You normally don't do due diligence in a 1 week time period and close in a month.
Yeah.
right. But I mean, but it's absolutely, to me though, really, she had it, and the way she described it too was, it was what she wanted, and
Yes, it was.
he was going to make it work. And I did have a very good friend, my orthodontist, tell me that. I remember that when I bought my own practice from being an associate and bought a practice, and I felt it was overpriced. And he was like, how much? 20, 30, say $40,000, you're paying too much. Amateurize that over 10 years.
Exactly.
And is it worth $50 a month? Well, they'll just take $100 a month for your freedom.
Yes.
And I was
exactly.
like, damn, that makes sense.
Right.
But it helped, right? It really helped a young guy say, okay. And then I stopped focusing on this purchase price and started focusing on all the things that I was going to do with it, right? And then within 3-4 years, we got we kind of took off. But that was really great advice. So it's just interesting. It was just knowing her story and hearing it. I just I just love that girl. Okay, so you're in and you're incubating the Lighthouse 360, right? You said you work for Practice Works. Okay. All right. What does the practice look like at this point? You're now 6 years in this building, is that right? Or 6 years in this practice together? Like Bridgette and her partner, or no?
So
2000.
yeah.
I mean, at least like 15 years at that point.
All right, so you got 15 years in, and you've seen your practice grow from bare bones nothing in an orthodontist office, taking toys out of the closet to work from, now to your own building. And did you said you bought a pediatrician office, right?
Yeah, but then we moved again. Yeah.
Yeah. At what point did that practice that you have become absolutely your vision of what you want, like Delaney's type of thing? Like when did that become your vision of how the practice should be set up?
Was a 40-year-old building, so that only lasted till about 2007, and then we moved to a building that was a block away, but it was a 2-story building. It was a office complex. A retail complex.
So she's skipping over the fact that from the business side, we had a fully functional plant that was perfect.
Yep.
And that I was able to continue to tumble rooms, adding treatment rooms, including a 5th unbooked treatment room, just so that we could handle the walk-in stuff like that.
My office away.
They had to leave their office and move it to the laundry room. But in all fairness, if the doctor's sitting in the office, they're not doing what they should be doing. And I had people in chairs so I could get.
Time out. You are 1000% right. I've told my team, like in our office, like I don't have an office. I work a little bit in this console room, and if you see me in here, someone's not doing their job. Like I like, it's like I could have wrote that exactly what you just said verbatim. But anyway, keep going, because I couldn't agree more.
it was working good, but it wasn't the vision of the office.
It wasn't pretty anymore.
It wasn't pretty. It was functional. It was cranking out. She was working 3 days a week, and the other, I mean, she had a schedule. You couldn't, very, very nice, but she wanted something better. So we bought the building across the street, and we went from 5 treatment rooms to 8 treatment rooms. That was
We
in
went from like
2006.
2,000 square feet to 3,800 square feet.
All right, so doubled it, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
How many so there was you said you and your partner, the 2 female dentists.
But we never worked at the same time.
One
Yeah.
actor in the building.
And 2 hygienists, but we had 4 hygiene rooms, which was perfect because each hygienist had 2 hygiene rooms. So and they worked, it was usually 40 minutes to an hour and a half, depending on where they were, but they would just flip rooms, and then an assistant, or if they were waiting for me or something, they'd go clean their room. So my big thing was we ran on time. That's a big thing for me. So we had extra rooms so that patients could be seated on time. I'm just a really structured dentist. So we ran on time. We had a great practice, and we still do. It's run by somebody else now, but she does a lot of the same things that we did. So
that's a non-negotiable, right? We are going to be on time.
Non-negotiable for me, yeah. And our childcare ended up getting, a huge makeover. It's huge now.
Reimagined.
Yes, but it's
We
nice.
looked at doing that, but New York State is so prohibitive on terms of what kind of size and space, and because that's what I wanted. And we ended up having a little childcare room, but it wasn't something that I wanted to have it for employees, because you had how many single moms, and
one of our hygienists has 5 children. So when she joined us, she had 2 children. And so we've watched her go all the way through 5 kids, and she was homeschooling at the end. So she just left us in December because she moved further away. But yeah, it's been perfect. We did not lose anybody through COVID. We didn't lose any employees because they brought their kids even when the schools were closed. So it has been the best practice builder and employee retention thing for us ever. And this is all because we had 4 kids, but our kids obviously are much older now. Our youngest is 26. So but we kept it even after our kids were grown because it was so good for the practice.
Okay, so at this point though, I get it that you and your partner are not in the building, but you have 8. You said you went to 6 to 8 operatories, you said, right? So you have associates, you have specialists. What does the practice look like in terms of how you're delivering your dentistry?
We only usually had 1 dentist there. We had an endodontist come in. We at some point had an esthetician that would come in, and she was doing facials. We added Botox and fillers to the practice. But we had a pretty easy schedule. Chris and I worked for a long time. We would work, our first day of the practice would work Thursday, Friday. We would have Saturday and Sunday off. Then we would work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Then we would be off until the following Thursday. So we basically worked 2 days, off 2 days, worked 3 days, off 7 days. So it was a very, very nice schedule. And we did that for 8 years. And then Chris left, and I had to go back to like working by myself for a long time. And then we brought in another associate. So we did that.
What did the revenue of the practice look like?
It was great because we were working, basically 5 days a week. And we were all in on those days that we were working, because if you're only working a few days a week, you don't care if you're working really, really hate on those days.
When I'm sitting at the front desk and I'm handling the scheduling, I know how to schedule.
Yeah.
We would have a few late night talks where I'd have to sleep with one eye open, where she would explain to me the dentistry of how this can't fit with that, and that we need to make sure. And it's like, we eventually learned to work it out. But if the schedule was open, it was filled.
Yeah, the dynamics of husband and wife working, it's a challenge,
It can be. We eventually got to where he did all of the business, I did all the clinical, and we talked about stuff at home, but we worked it out. It was okay.
But how much did you see your practice grow, like revenue wise? So you don't have to give me exact numbers, but did you see a 50% growth over that time period, or you know?
I don't know. I mean, we got to about maybe 1.2 million or so before we sold it.
And it wasn't a matter of how fast could we run the engine. It's like it was running at the speed that we were comfortable at, because by that time,
Yeah.
Lighthouse had off and doing well and so forth. So
I mean, I got down at the end. I was only working, you know, when I had lost my associate at that point, I was working 3 days a week and we were still doing that much money. So it was like, I didn't want to work anymore. And I had turned 50 at that point. And it was like, then I'm bringing an associate in. And I was like, oh, we have to build this back up so that she'll have patience. So, you know, then we had to turn the engine back on. We started with more advertising. So the good news is we know how to do that. We know how to build things back up so that we can get it. And, you know, that's fun for me. You know, that's a challenge. Just go ahead and build it back up so that we can create this again.
Growth is fun.
Yeah. And
So-
I mean,
So you get it to the point now you sell. When you sold it, let's talk about that transition, because we're going to get into the dental practice matchmaker shortly. So talk about the transition. Did you bring in did you advertise? Did you put it? Probably wasn't the JATA at the point. You know, did you put it in publications? Did you
No.
list it? How
So,
did you attract? And then did you transition, bring them in, or did you say,
So-
I'm out?
So Alan sold Lighthouse and he comes home like, I don't know, a week later. And he's like, we need to sell the practice. And I'm like, I don't think I want to sell the practice.
I had free time on my hand and I wasn't going to be doing it by myself. I hadn't even turned 50 yet. So it's like, okay, let's go travel. And she's like, hey, I've got to practice. I'm like,
So we signed up with a broker.
the traditional,
A
this is the way you're
traditional
supposed to do it.
broker.
Okay, so
Yeah.
a typical dental broker that represents the seller or
Yes.
represents both.
So
This was a seller
Uh-huh.
where they're adamant about getting all sorts of information that they promptly ignore or lie about and come up with their own description and then try to force all sorts of bad matches because they want a closing to happen so they can get 10% of what they just spent, you know, a week or two on that you spent 30 years on, but they get their 10% before anything else. And so needless to say,
the only thing that we did good was they gave us an option of going the traditional route, or we could pay them, I think, like $5,000 and they would come up with a package and we didn't necessarily have to go all the way to the end with them. So we went the package route and they came up with, you know, this kind of a thing that they were gonna market. And so we had three
Like a pro
offers.
forma kind of thing?
Yes.
Like a,
3 offers the first week. One person was graduating from dental school. So this is a very productive practice and we do a lot of stuff. This guy couldn't have done all that. One guy had a problem with his dental license, and one guy.
I like how you put that.
Yeah.
Problem.
And one guy he was capable of buying the practice. He didn't want to work there. He was going to add it to his portfolio. Well, I'm a private practice person, so I'm not keen on that. So those were the 3 options we had. And I'm like, that's not going to work for us. But that wasn't even the worst part. You know, we give him our tax returns. We give him everything honestly about the practice. And our practice is 30% kids. We still see a lot of kids. And he's like, well, nobody really wants that many kids in their practice. I'm like, well, it doesn't matter. That's how many kids we got in the practice. And so they whitewashed everything. They're like, well, that's not what people want to see. We're gonna change all this stuff. And I'm like, you can't change it because that's what we actually have. So they literally lied on so many things. And it gave me the most disgusting feeling I have ever felt in my entire life. And then, you know, he brought these people in and he's walking through and I'm following him as he's telling these people about our practice and he's lying then. And I'm like, I can't do this. So that was our introduction to brokers. So needless to say,
how did you separate from the broker then?
we said, go screw yourself.
we said it wasn't for sale anymore.
Yeah.
We were taking it off the market and we were going to run it.
Yes. So, but we still did
But
sell
you
it.
paid your deal was, though, you paid him a flat rate
Yeah, we paid like $5,000, so not a lot of
Okay.
money.
All right.
Okay, so he goes away, but we still want to sell it, not right then. So it, at that point, I'm like, okay, we're going to do this a different way. So my staff and I, and we've been together a long time, so I trust them. We are good friends. I come to them and I'm like, okay, we're going to try and sell our practice, but I want to bring somebody in, mentor them, and get somebody that we all trust, because these are my patients that I've had for 30 years. And they're like, cool. So we all, we get a list off the Georgia Dental Association. I pick the people that have been out 5 years to 10 years that are within 100 miles of my practice. And at the time you could do this, I don't think you can now. Narrowed all them down, pick the addresses, and we address 700 letters. Hand addressed 700.
That's a lot of dentists.
Metro Atlanta though, so we're pretty big. And we did a letter saying, hey, if you want to start your practice within my practice, because I'm only here 3 days a week, I'm keen on that. If you think you would like to join our practice, I'm keen on that. If you think you would like to buy my practice, I'm open to that. We sent out 700 letters. We got about 4 or 5 people. And one of them ended up buying the practice, but it wasn't.
Hold on. Let people hear that for one more second.
Okay.
700 letters. You heard from 4 or 5 people.
Normal direct mail response rate.
Yeah.
Good response rate for direct mail.
So one of them came in. We talked to maybe 3 different people, but the person that eventually bought my practice came in, and she did not come to the office. So we met her at a restaurant. I don't think Adrian was with her at that time. We just met her at a restaurant, talked to her. I really liked her. But she wasn't, super enthused about us. And I was like, oh, okay. So she leaves. We don't hear from her. So about 2 or 3 months later, I reached out to her again, and I'm like, I really liked you. What didn't you like about us? And she's like, well, I could be interested, and I'm like, well, why don't you come to the office? Because she hadn't seen the office. She comes to the office, and I did not know it at the time, but she was pregnant and she had already had a child. So she comes in, she sees the child care, she sees the office, which, to be perfectly honest, is gorgeous. And she's like, this is kind of cool. And I think she got sold right then. And so she was already working 4 days a week somewhere else, and she decided to work 1 day a week at our office for a few months just to see how it was. And that went really well. And then she went on maternity leave. And when she came back from maternity leave, she started working at our office. She worked for us for about 2.5 years.
Where it was full open books, open
Yeah.
disclosure. We were teaching her from the get-go
Mhm.
how to run an office, even though she had no skin in the game. We wanted her to know, and including her husband, to make sure that they could take over what we had.
And her husband, coincidentally, has a business degree. So
wait, I'm going to go back to what you just said now for a second. You're teaching them the business. So when you hired her for the day a week, did you, because you said you're open to these things. So did you create an employment contract, number one? And then number two, did you have those discussions? And I'm assuming that she had expressed some interest in potentially being an owner, because otherwise it wouldn't make sense to try to teach someone that doesn't want to do
Before she went on maternity leave, we were just investigating. When she went on maternity leave and she came back, she's like, no, this is something I want to do. And at that point we were like, okay, let's open this up.
What's something I want to do? I want to own?
She wants to own it. Yeah.
Okay.
Before it was
That's
like
a big step. Some people just ain't
she
made
was
for it, but
and when she came back, she's like, no, I'm in. And
young child, new baby. She knew our story, how we grew up, and she could see her future being very similar in that platform.
And it's worked out wonderfully for her. I mean,
so you mentioned the contract. We had a standard agreement, and the key thing about writing the correct contracts is either side of the table should be willing to flip either way. And we actually did that. When she actually became the owner, part of the closing was to take the exact contract that she'd been working under and have Bridgette sign it as the associate. So now she's the associate working the way that.
Well, did you have anything in there that was about the buy-in or the buyout portion?
No, but I mean, I told her, and okay, it took a lot of trust from her because Delaney was in dental school at the time. So
Right.
she trusted me. And I told her Delaney's in dental school. She does not want to come back and practice here. And that was more personal on Delaney's point. And I think Delaney and I love each other dearly. It worked out very good that we didn't practice together.
Get it.
And I think we both knew that from
I
the
get it.
yeah, I mean it can be complicated. And truly, I mean, I went to dental school with a lot of kids that went back and practiced with their dads. Not one of them stayed with their dads. And I knew that. And I'm like, I want to keep our relationship good. I don't care if she comes and practices with me. But Paris had to trust me that wasn't going to happen. And she did. And Delaney is in Birmingham. I'm in Atlanta. And we sold to Paris, but she had to trust me and it worked great.
So now Bridget
so
works
she-
for Delaney.
Yeah.
So she started, you said 1 day a week? When did she go more?
She didn't want to,
Still working at her corporate
yeah,
job.
she was working at her corporate job and then she went on maternity leave, didn't really necessarily tell them she was working this 1 day. And when she came back from maternity leave, she told them, you know, I'm going to be working somewhere else.
So she came then full time with you then, is that what you're saying? 4 days a
Yeah,
week?
but at that time, I was still working like 3 days a week and she came back and did the 3 days and I went down to 2 days. So we were open 5 days, but I was working less than she was when she came back.
They're feeding her
Okay.
patients.
But you had to be there because you said you're mentoring her, right? So right, okay. So again, now you have an employment contract. Now let's talk about the buy out or buy in part because this comes up a lot, and I'm sure you see it on Dental Practice Matchmaker a ton. Listen, I've been working here 2 years. The practice went from 1 million to 2 million. Now the buy-in, and now I'm going to have to buy what I built, et cetera, et cetera. So I remember the conversation back in my era was, you know, if you can get that price point agreed on, and then you'll get credit for the growth because you're going to buy it at that price point. How did you negotiate the buy? Well, it's a buyout, right? How did you negotiate that?
Didn't do that because we did a ton of advertising in order to, because realize I'm at 3 days a week. I have to put a ton of advertising in so that she can come in and be busy enough so that we can both be there. So I put a ton of advertising in there so that we can be up to 5 days a week so that we're big enough for us both to work there. We get it back up to a normal, healthy practice so that she can buy it. So
if people are listening, right? This
uh-huh.
because this is a point that you do not see this on, well, you know, the Facebook generation. You don't see this described. You only hear, "Oh, I'm an associate. I'm kind of
Yes,
getting
I
a
thought
shaft."
to it.
Listen,
Yeah.
you have to make some business decisions. So you're going to change the dynamics of the profits because you're going to put more money into the gas, into the engine, into the wheels, to the, you know, to all the parts of the car to make sure that car has room for six, etc. Right? So you can't take that out of the equation.
And I
So
absolutely
you
made
make those.
less money. I
Yeah.
made less money
To enable her to.
in order to make her make more money while she was growing, you know. So I mean it all works out in the end.
Sure.
And again, she inherited a very healthy, she bought a very healthy practice.
That just continued to go
Yeah.
upward. So it really
When
comes down to
when did you sit down then and negotiate the buy then? Like at what point?
Set the price by 2 years, but so we had a bank issue and it was truly a bank issue. They were going through a
their own merger. They were getting acquired. So they basically shut down all of their stuff without telling anybody they shut it down. So we're going through the process to get through a normal closing and it's being delayed and being delayed and oh, we can't do it. And we're like,
and we're like, what's going on?
nothing's changing the practice, nothing's changing the people. It's all the same stuff that you approved ahead of time.
And so like 2 months, and then we're up at Yankee, where we at Yankee, and they call us and they're like, we can close tomorrow. And we're like, what? So yeah, like in December they couldn't close, and then all of a sudden in January they're like, oh, we can do this tomorrow. And we're like,
This
okay,
is the
so,
bank that the doctor that's purchasing is using to buy.
well,
Which is our bank
it's
as
our
well.
bank too. So everybody knew
Right.
everything.
Yeah, no, but it's predominantly they're financing that for them, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
The irony it is this bank that's doing the financing for the new doctor had a 20-year history of the practice. It's not like this
Right,
was an
right,
unknown
right. No,
haircut.
believe me, I'm small town America. I get that. You know, I have good relationships at 2 different banks, and I can pretty much call them anytime and kind of do something.
Crazy, but
So,
yeah,
how, if you don't mind sharing, how did it work? Was it, listen, it's 100% buy, I'm out, and now we flip the script, I'm the associate, etc. Was there okay, listen, we're going to hold some paper, you're going to pay us this over amount of time? Was there sweat equity? What was it? Was it a sell, check, out?
we purchased it all.
With the caveat of you hear about asset sales or you hear about stock sales, and it's like, no, this entity that has 30 years of history, we need to kill it. You need to stand up something brand new tax ID, brand new labor ID. You need to start submitting to insurance companies that won't know you from Adam and totally mess up your cash flow. I've got the business background. We've got a great CPA, and we said, why don't we do a hybrid there? Let's go ahead and allow the assets to be purchased, allow the goodwill to be bought from the retiring doctor and so forth. Let's keep the shell there. Let's keep the same tax ID. Let's keep the same bank accounts. Let's keep all the things that are seasoned, get them down to just a shell, and then sell her 100% of the entity that's already there. So she didn't have to create a new corporation.
Yeah.
She bought a 30-year-old.
So I'm guessing you were S Corp, or what were you?
It was a PC in Georgia.
Oh, PC. Okay, yeah, PC, professional corporation.
And changed the name of the tax ID with the Secretary of State.
So the irony was, after she bought it, she was operating as Bridgett L. Jorgensen, DMD PC.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you. If the name of the practice was generic, or Bright Smiles or whatever, but it
name was generic for the area, North Gwinnett Dental Care. But the actual entity that did all the tax filings was Bridgett L. Jorgensen, DMD PC, that got picked 30 years ago that we didn't think about. But the key thing, by doing that the right way, they had no interruption of cash flow. They had no change of anything. When she was the owner, the next day, insurance went out the exact same way as it did all prior.
Right. So she bought the receivables too, I'm assuming?
They did.
I think so. Yeah. Like I said, we had 2 years.
That keeps it truly intact, right? Everything's there.
And then they just changed the name of the PC through Secretary of State. So eventually,
it's her name, PC.
I would imagine, though, your lawyer might say, listen, you really want to get your name off it because you're no longer liability.
The point out thing is, like, if you're going to a complete stranger, do you truly want to assume that they did everything correctly, legally? Or if you buy that corporation and now something pops up a month later, a year later, you own the corporation, it's yours to deal with. So a simple cross indemnification to basically say, hey, the CPA, the bank, we're all here. We've been doing it for 30 years. There's nothing outstanding, but we'll go on better. If anything does come up, we will indemnify you, and we will resolve and protect any issue that comes up when you weren't the owner. So there's ways around anything. People buy companies all the time. It's only dentists that make it hard to say, you got to kill this and you got to start this.
But I would imagine, though, your malpractice had a few words to say too, right? Just to make sure that, the tail or the coverage or something, with the purchase with your name, means that kind of thing. No?
Yeah. Each doctor has their own malpractice coverage, and then you can buy a very small corporate shell coverage when you're running it like that. So from an insurance perspective, it was, whether she was the associate or the owner, not a single thing changed.
And I think it helped that she had worked there for 3 years, so she knew that there was nothing outstanding that was weird.
Okay, so it ended up being a 3-year employment agreement then, ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, she worked there for quite a while before we did the transition.
Okay. Yeah. And the negotiations, how about, let's talk about the value, coming up with the value of the practice, right? Because that's always a popular conversation. Well, they got this practice listed at 1.3. I think it's worth, 700,000, and how do you do that? And what the broker, and is the building involved, and blah, 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 blah.
So our bank,
how did you guys come up with the value?
We went to our bank and said, what do you usually loan on a practice? And he said around 75% of your collections. And we're like, cool. And that's what we set it as.
No.
Wait, that's just too easy. Stop.
We actually did it too.
The actual valuation was done by a valuation specialist credentialed in business valuation, which most dental offices don't even know or never follow. there's an actual science, there's procedure, there's standards, your AICPA and everything. There's ways to do any business valuation that is third-party neutral, arm's length, using all the various factors to come up with a defensible number that's you can use in court because they need it for divorce filings and stuff like that. So when he crunched the numbers and everything, gee, it came real close to what the bank said they were going to want anyway. So it just so happened to line up like that. But the best recommendation we can have is make sure if you're going to get a value, get it done according to the correct method by an independent third party.
Because the banks won't necessarily accept, what the broker says or anything like that.
And you can actually, each person can get their own person to do the valuation.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. You have a buyer, right? You have a buyer, you have a relationship. Couple options, right? One, the two of you split the cost of the evaluation.
Yes.
Or since it's your practice, you pay for the evaluation. If they disagree with it or want to challenge it, they can get their own independent, right? So how did this go down? You guys got the evaluation, kind of lines up where the bank says. Was the other person happy with it?
Yeah, they were fine.
It's the same CPA. So
Yeah,
everything was on one
CPA.
table, one roof.
Well, that's interesting.
We did not have a
That's really interesting. They use the same CPA as yours?
Yeah, we did not have a contentious problem at all. I mean, we have a great relationship with all the professionals in this area, and we introduce them to all these great professionals.
And any piece of paper you can flip around and have either side sign either part of it means that you've got a balanced, fair agreement.
Right, but the other part of it is too, right? How it's written. Because certain things are tax advantageous to the seller, and certain things are tax advantageous to the buyer. Did you negotiate those things? Because that's really in like, okay, so you come up with a number, let's say it's $1 million. And they say, all right, we're going to cut Goodwill's 250. We're going to put the hard assets at this. That's 100% write-off for you, et cetera, et cetera. Or, we're going to pay you a covenant. So that's going to be deductible. No, that's going to go to you. That's not capital gains. That's ordinary income. How did that all go down?
With the same CPA, again, known him forever. He's known us for a long time. He's known them for a little bit, but he is a neutral mediator in that he's looking at the big picture and saying, if we do this, here's how it benefits everybody.
Right.
Wasn't to our total great benefit. It was something that made sense so that we could be what we needed, what was owed, and they were in a position to be successful. Because they didn't buy the building. That's something that's still possibly down the line, but we owned the building and we were our own landlord. So by them buying the practice, we had to have a real market lease set up. So we could continue. And this relationship's going on for
6 years.
6 years. So we knew the last thing you want to do is have a battle, have something unfair that's then going to spill over. So it was put on the CPA to say, whatever you do, you make sure everybody succeeds in this. We need them to win so that they'll continue to be a good tenant for us.
Yeah, we had a dentist retire, and then and he wanted out, and I said, okay, well, here's how I've done it. Here's how things have gone, and here's some of the tax ramifications, right? So if we put it this way, it's positive for you. If we go this way, it's positive for both of us. If we go this way, it favors me from a tax standpoint, So, I was just totally, completely transparent in my understanding of it because he told me to come up with a number, essentially, because we had talked to him prior, COVID hits, and then he came back because then he's like, no, I was like, okay, that's fine, we don't have to do this. And he came back later, and I said, well, I'm just going to show you the numbers, and this is what it works out to be. Because I do think there's a valuation, but I also think there's different markets, right? So if you're in a spot where there's a high demand, right? Demand's going to drive up your practice. If you're in a spot where their demand is not as high, which might be some of the rural communities, you're going to get less value, right?
Well, a valuation is a very precise process that yields a number that's defensible. That's not the price or the value. The price is what two people agree upon to do, and it might be above the valuation, it might be a little valuation. So you want to have someone come up with what it should be according to everything on paper, and then that's the starting point to then say, now, how do we make this work? Is it a buyer's market? Is it a seller's market? Do you mark it up with a premium? Because the other thing to keep in mind, especially if you're bringing a lender to the table, is the reason you want to have a professional real estate valuation, the reason you want to have a professional business valuation is that pesky third party, you may think I'm worth $1 million, and on paper it's only 500,000. The bank's not going to go off your emotions. They need to get it through underwriting. They need a real value that they can defend.
Yeah, when I was my first start, I remember the senior, it was almost, what would you say, uncouth to sell your practice. The value was in your real estate, and the practice was almost like, oh, that's unethical to sell your practice. And then that kind of has switched, you know what I mean? But but the problem was a lot of these guys were so highly valued in their office, which was never touched since 1968, and it still had the same paneling, same rugs. I'm like, well, your value, your property's not what it is. I mean, we can get evaluations from the real estate people, because that's who should to tell you on that. And your practice, unfortunately, what you did financially, that's what's going to determine that, you know. So talk about now, how did any of this experience like lead into dental practice matchmaker, or it probably had to have something to do with it.
Well, actually, Delaney's situation led into matchmaker. So during COVID, her dentist laid her, so she's working in a private practice in Birmingham, and he laid her off, but really didn't discuss anything. Just go home. I don't know if I'm going to ever talk to you again. So, you know, they had just bought a house, and she's like, well, I don't know what's going on. So she realized at that point that she wanted to be in control of her own life, you know, even if she worked for somebody else, she needed to know what was going on. So she couldn't really put on Facebook or anywhere that she was looking for a home practice. But because I live in an adjacent state, I put on Dental Peeps over in Birmingham that I was going to move to Birmingham, but I'm a dentist in Atlanta. And is there anybody that wants to sell their practice over there? And I had about 3 people contact me. I sent them immediately to her. She contacted them kind of offline, and then went and saw their practices and bought one of those practices. So that got both Ellen and I thinking, you know, this is how it could be so much easier if just dentists could contact dentists, but you can't put it out so publicly, because then, you know, people don't want to lose their associates, but, you know, people are scared to kind of put it out there that they want to buy a practice or they'll lose their job.
We weren't brilliant or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's amazing. When I got into the dental office and they handed a chart, I'm looking at it saying, this is the 90s. There's no business in America that would operate the way you guys operate, and yet you're so fixated on it. You know, here it is, 2020. Zillow is out there. Everything used to be MLS. All the markets were controlled, and then you use technology to disrupt and make things possible. And because of that real world experience we had, and even prior to that, when she was going through dental school, we were meeting her classmates, and we were just seeing what the rising generation was being told and what they were being offered. We had so many contracts sent to us when they were graduating and so forth. We said that we need to have an ability to have people talk to people freely, confidently, and understand what's going on and share. Let the people a couple of steps ahead on the path pay it back. Help guide the people below while they're getting a little advice from the people ahead of them. And so, yeah, we just created an area that only dentists, no brokers, no TSO. We want dentists in there to be able to ask the questions and to get answers, and hopefully.
Now, is this just to sell practices, or is this also to find jobs?
No, it's absolutely to find jobs. And a lot of it is people go, like she went to Boston to go to school, but she did not want to stay in Boston to live. She wanted to go somewhere else to find a practice or to find a job. Well, if you go to California to go to school, but you want to go back to Birmingham to find your practice, it's not super easy to find a job if you're in your senior year out in California, unless you come out there, you know, you're visiting in Birmingham and you find a recruiter or something like that.
And you flip it around to the senior docs that are wanting to slow down, thinking about selling, or the middle docs that are just running and gunning, and they've got the ability to take somebody on. How do they find a dentist to come in? So whether you are looking or hiring, or you're buying or you're selling, there's all sorts of people that just need to get to the right point so they can have a conversation.
So we just made it very easy for people to find each other without using recruiters. Where I mean, they're charging $40,000 and $50,000 to put somebody in your practice, and they literally they take that money, and then if they don't last, if they last a month,
We'll tell you another one.
they charge you another $40,000 or $50,000 to find another person. And that's just
Yeah,
ridiculous.
we have used a couple of them recently over the last few years, and the first one was gangbusters. They gave us, like 25 resumes, and I don't think maybe one or two actually responded to the inquiry. And I was like, well, how are they even in this pool? Why is this? Here's a legitimate fee-for-service practice that they could come in and I could show you what you could do. Like I could literally show you.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is something.
Are able to talk to the associate coming in, and you're going to have a better feel of who's going to work in your practice better than a third-party recruiter. So, we're just making it easy. So now, we've kind of expanded. We're doing a lot of employment agreements. We're doing contract reviews. Our son is an attorney, so that's helping.
I was just going to ask you. You got to have grown your staff. Then you have a CPA. Do you have an attorney on staff?
We've got it all. So
we do the due diligence. I mean, again, the whole purpose is to, with the gray hair, the little bit of wisdom, when a young doc says, hey, I think this practice is good, but I don't know how to read any of this, and they need an answer, send the docs in. We will guide you through what this means, what's good, what's bad, what's possible. And again, whatever you do, but it's nice to do it with a little input.
So let's say a young doc, just for an example, young doc's got a practice. He's hot. He or she is hot to trot on it, and they come and they say, "I don't know if this is worth this value." What does that look like to them, and what does that cost them to get a assessment? We'll call it.
I think our due diligence is around 1,100, but we send them a list of documents. They send it to us. We give them suggestions. Number one, we give them. This is kind of what this practice looks like. These are things that, maybe you want to address afterwards, or these are things that maybe are a little scarier than you think they are. Maybe this isn't the perfect practice to buy. Most of the things that we've seen are pretty good. Some things aren't as good. And to be honest, we're getting stuff from brokers that do, like, they'll have a broker pro forma that do not match in any way the P&L stuff and the practice documents. And that's terrifying, because these young docs,
crack me up.
They're going only by the valuation, and they're not looking at the other stuff because they don't know what they're reading.
They don't know what they don't know. So again, we're independent, non-emotional. We don't care whether it happens or not. We just want to say these are the findings.
And the brokers care if it goes to closing. They desperately want it to go to closing.
Of course they do. At all costs. And at all ethical costs. You already proved it,
They want you to look at it for 10 minutes and sign that letter, or a lot
They
of
want
times,
you emotionally invested, and
yes,
then they got
they
you.
want that letter of intent signed
Before you look at it.
because we've seen a lot of stuff where you have to sign the letter of intent before you even get the documents. And we realized that the letter of intent means that no matter what, the seller is now responsible to pay them, whether that goes to fruition or not. They're like, we found you a seller or a buyer. If they don't go through it, we found you one, and oh well. And it's like it's beyond ridiculous, some of this stuff. So we're just we're taking ethics back to this stuff.
Thank God. I mean, I looked at there was a practice for sale in a small town not too far from us, and I said, "Yeah, let's take a look." So sign all the NDAs and stuff, and they sent it to me, and I was like, "It's P&L doesn't match the tax return. Like it's not even close. Are we in fantasy land? I mean, this has got to be real data. Like, I mean, I would hope you're not lying on your tax return. That's one thing. And you absolutely can lie on your P&L, that's for sure. And and I was like, oh, okay. And the broker started arguing with me. I said, listen, it's just not something I'm interested in.
Right.
Take care of yourself. And you don't understand. I said, I do understand. I live and grew up in this area. Don't start telling me about the area, right? I grew up. You're like, I'm way ahead of you. You're downstate. I'm upstate. Been here my whole life. Let's not have that conversation on for real.
But it's
Oh,
not
my
just
goodness.
young doctors. I mean, the young doctors need input guidance. We can do that for them. We're the old docs selling. It's amazing the number of practices out there that the brokers won't touch. Well, you're not a millionaire, the DSO won't. They're cherry picking. Well, I want something quick and easy to sell. I don't want something hard to sell. Or they grab the middle of the road, the rural one, the 500, 800, and they do nothing on it. They just put it in their portfolio and they hope it sells it so they can get their
They
paycheck.
put it on their website, but they do nothing else. And I mean, we've been party to the
We
sale.
haven't sold
Well, I
anything.
mean, we literally take no money from anything.
We are not a part of that transaction if it goes through or not, but we can give them guidance on what to do.
And we had one that were actually a friend of this guy, and it was on somebody else's website for 18 months. And it's been on our website now for
Less than a
maybe
month.
a month, and they have 3 people that are interested. So it's just putting it out there, and if
You know what? You only need one.
but we have 18,000 people on our Facebook group. So, if you're part of a broker thing that has, maybe 200 or 300 people that look, maybe 200 or 300 people aren't going to be interested, but 1 out of 18,000, there's a decent possibility somebody's interested. So
All
we're
right.
happy.
Well, hey, super. Thank y'all. I got to ask you one last question though. Okay, I'm going to ask each of you. You can each answer separately, please.
Okay.
You don't need to put headphones on. This is not the newlywed game. We're okay. All right. So, if you could go back in time to any place, anywhere, do anything, anyone, any experience whatsoever, where would you go?
I know my answer. She doesn't know her answer, but I know my answer.
Go ahead. You're up. You fired your it's the first thought that pops in your head. Go ahead, Al.
I'd probably redo our honeymoon because we went camping for one night, and we've had a phenomenal life, but our camping one night was not the best start to our marriage.
I had to work the next day. See, I would go back to 7th grade when we were sitting side by side and we didn't know each other. We have a picture of us in junior high band sitting side by side, but we didn't actually meet until our junior year of high school.
Really? You didn't have the eyes on her? Nothing?
No class, no other interaction.
Really?
She was in the band briefly. I was a band geek, and it was on the marching field the summer of our junior year that we ran into each other literally because the halftime show needed debugged, and they had the tubas marching through the flag girls, and that's how we met.
I think there was some wavelengths rolling in 7th grade, and it didn't come to fruition until junior year high school.
I was a bit of a geek in 7th grade. She wouldn't have had me in 7th grade.
Right. So, see, I would say the same thing with my wife, man. If I met her in high school, she wouldn't like me. I wouldn't like her.
But in high school, I had a gremlin, and she was going for the gremlin. She could care less about me, but I was the only gremlin in the parking lot, and that did something for her.
Excellent. All right. Well, listen, this has been great. A lot of good stuff. A lot of honesty, a lot of authenticity too, which I was fully expecting that. So
Well,
thank you all very much. I'd like to have you back on. I'd like to catch an update. We'll talk more about Practice Matchmaker, and then I'm sure there's plenty of stories of things that are going on that we can discuss.
We can do a Family Feud edition. We can have some outtakes in there.
There you go.
See you later. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Fee for Service Dentist Podcast. If you would like to share your fee for service story, please fill out our contact form at ffsdentistry.com. Also, be sure to join our Fee for Service Dentistry Facebook group. For help starting your dental membership plan, visit dentalmembershipdirect.com and membershipmastercourse.com. Finally, for help with in-house financing, visit dentalfinancingdirect.com. And don't forget, your story is what you make of it. This is your name on the door and your reputation on the line. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.
This has been a Rogue Media Network